Welcome, my dear students of class 12, to this English class with me, your tutor Atsinyo Sekose. And today we are going to take a look at another writing topic. You would find it on page 34. In fact, page 34 and 35. So here we have the topic. Here is report writing. And we have just discussed about writing an article, and writing article and comparing it with report writing is very similar, but it has a different format. At the same time, you would also find that report writing is far more factual. So that is what you will find in this case here, factual in the sense that we are referring to events, places, date, time, and so on. So that is what you would find more. You would find that it is the same thing in terms of informing people. It is the same thing here. So even report writing also inform people, but you would find that it is more factual in terms of language, and in fact more factual in terms of its presentation and even in language. So here, page 34, report writing. A report is a written account of an event or occurrence written with an intention of relaying information to the readers. So that's why the first thing, the objective that we have here is to inform. Now, the next point, a report can be in the form of a short memo or a lengthy presentation. So what do we mean by a short memo? Let's first discuss that. A short memo is a written account of all the specific details. Supposing you went to you attended an event and you note down the kind of program, the date, time, place, and so on, and the main theme of that or the main key points of a speech there and so on. So that is your memo. Now, supposing you have that, so a report is very short and precise. So that is what we can also have here. But we cannot really say that it is always short and precise, depending on the kinds of event or depending on the kinds of things that the person is reporting, the length can be also determined. So it is a lengthy presentation running into 1,000 of words. The essential skill in writing a report involves the next point, identifying the chief information. Identify the chief information. Out of attending an event, what was the main point that you want to convey? So identify that, and that is what should be reflected in your report writing. And what is the next step here? Presenting it in a simple yet direct format. Present it in a simple direct format. So that is what we have under simple direct format. What do we mean by simple direct format? The language should be simple in such a way that those who are reading, or your audience for that matter, would be able to comprehend it. Now, which means, again, it's very similar to articles here. You should avoid elaborative words, bombastic words. Avoid that, because the main point here is for you to inform, and if you are using very ambiguous or very decorative words, people may not understand and the meaning would get lost. So avoid that. Then we have a sample here. I hope you would take some time to go through it. For today, we would not be doing that as such. Then the next point here is notice how the newspaper report is free of any personal bias or comments. It simply states the facts. without drawing any inferences. So in the previous class, I have suggested an activity that is to look up for a newspaper and read an article to help you understand it better. And the same thing can be applied here. For report writing, you can also take a look at how reporters of a certain newspaper are reporting the news and so on. So when you are able to do that, you would be able to get the format as well as the kind of language that you are supposed to use. And when you read it, you would notice that it is always very factual. So we have already discussed what is factual facts, the time, date, place, and so on. So those are factual things, maybe even names of people that you are mentioning. And you would notice that it is not prejudiced. What do we mean when we say prejudice? Prejudice is having a set of opinions or beliefs that you have against another person or maybe even a section of society or ideas or opinions and so on. So when we have that kind of a prejudiced mind, the facts would get distorted. So make sure you are not prejudiced in your presentation. Make sure that you are not making any inferences. In other words, do not go about supposing, let's just say, 35 people out of 100 are illiterate. In fact, let's say which would help, if we are to make inferences, we would think in such a way that, okay, so only 35 people are literate, what about the rest? And if you are presenting these 35 but talking a lot about these 100, then the message would again get distorted. So make sure you do not have much inferences. At the same time, the main important thing here to remember is no personal opinion. So if you do not present any kind of personal opinion, you would find that you are able to avoid inferences in such a way. So here, make sure that it is not prejudiced, no personal opinions. For instance, you may have noticed in newspaper how they are presenting only the facts, and they usually do not, in fact, not usually, you would not find that they are harming the other section of community or, for that matter, a society and so on. So make sure that your personal opinion does not get involved with the inferences. So such kind of things should be avoided, which brings us back to the main point here. Report writing is always factual. Now, some of the key points to note when writing a report, very quickly. There are three main parts of a report, that is introduction, body, and section. Just as in article, we find that we have introduction, body, and conclusion. That is what you will also find in the parts here, the structure. Then the next thing to remember here is all the important information and details about every in fact, event, situation must be mentioned in the report. Use the simple rule of 5 W's, that is what, where, when, why, which, and so on. So that is one tip that you can find here. So on the format here, remember the parts are introduction, body, and conclusion, and you would find that the 5 W's very useful to use. What, why, when. When you are, remember we have discussed about power writing, when you are pre-writing and collecting or making a list of the things to put into your work, you can also use this. Question yourself, what is the purpose of this writing? What is the event, the occasion? So that would give you the facts. And the same thing goes with which, where, the time, place, and so on. So that is the thing that you need to keep noted. And the next point, keep the language clear and concise. We have already discussed that here, so we would not go over it again. Now let's take a look at the format. You would find it on page 35. So what we have here is the title, the first point. And it should be in the center. And the next point that is important here, reporter's name. Again, it is optional, whether you wanted to give the reporter's name or not. In fact, let me clarify this. Under report writing, reporter's name is optional, but in article writing, the writer's name or the author's name, you can always feature it. Then the next point here is newspaper name. And as you can see in the sample there, we have, I'll very quickly read it out. The title is in the center, that is Mission Green, Nagaland, launched. And after that, we have the place, Dimapur, June 26. And then you have a semicolon. I hope you would notice the small details here. So after the newspaper's name, what we have here is place and date. Again, following that, you have the introduction. So here is you have place and date. Then we have the parts of the format, that is introduction, body, and conclusion. So that is what we have here. You would find that these things are important. It's very small details, but important. So in the format, make sure that your title is in the center. If you want to add reporter's name, in some case you will not find it. So do not, I have suggested take a look into your newspaper or a newspaper here. And in some case, you would not find the reporter's name. So you may not get confused here. That is optional. Then newspaper's name and followed by place and date. Now, what do we mean by place? Where did that event took place? If it is in Dimapur, if it is in Wokha, or here in Kohima, and so on. So the place, then followed by the date. I want to draw your attention again. Make sure after the place, you use the comma, and date, the semicolon, in that way. After that semicolon, then runs your article. You can begin your, in fact, you can begin your writing. So that's what we have. Now, after writing, you see that in the format here, it is only in paragraph. So these things, introduction, body, conclusion, can come into a paragraph. And not one paragraph. Make sure you separate it because you want to keep track of the line of thought here. And in the introduction, depending on whether it is going to be a lengthy report or not, you can break it up into more than one paragraph. And the same case with the body section, more than one paragraph, and then conclusion. So even conclusion can have more than one paragraph, and so on. So that is what we have in under the format of report writing. Now let's take a look at some of the questions that we have here. So you would find it on page 36. Exercise F, write a newspaper report in not more than 200 words on any of these topics. So I want you to keep note, in fact, highlight the words here. It is very important, the number of words that you are using. You would find that the number of words really affect the writing, in fact, vice versa. So here, depending on whether the report is supposed to be written in 200 words or 150 words or 400, 500, and so on. So depending on that, you should be able to constrain, or we can also say construct your form of writing. At the same time, the use of language, limit your language to fit into that words limit. So that's what we have. So now question number 1. Kohima Girl wins Miss Gold East title. You are supposed to write one on following this format. If you are still confused, you can follow that previous exercise, which is only about filling up the blanks here. You can fill it up as you wish. And then only you can also attempt these questions. Now, as you can see in your text here, I would not be wasting time reading it out, but I'll give you some activities here. What you can do is, remember, do not forget to look up pick up an actual newspaper and go through it, whether it is the article section or the reporters section. Make sure you do that once, and then you can come back to your text, refer it, and then attempt the questions. Then, remember, I have pointed out in the previous class as well, writing is something that comes, that is the last form of, or we can also say one of the last skills. First, we learn to listen, then we learn to speak, we learn to read slowly, and then comes writing. So it is very important. Reading is always, you would find that good writers are always good readers. So make sure you read as much as possible, and this applies to almost all of the other lessons here. So make sure you read first and try to gather, expose yourself to different kinds of format, and that will really help you even in the language. Okay, so in report writing, these kinds of language are being used. Okay, so in notice, so that is that is how you would be able to come about with your, in fact, learn more about different forms of writing. When we say essay, that is a different thing. When we say notice, that is a different thing. Or when we say advertisement, I'm sure you have seen plenty in the newspapers that we get. So that is what we have. Make sure you make a point to go through that first, and that is one of the activity. Now, I'm sure many of us are not able to access formal education, and we are more exposed to using the language speaking in schools rather than at home, many of us for that matter. So I would suggest that you try to draft one, present it, and speak, and you can also make a point to discuss all these topics with your parents or family members. And when we say topics here, the kinds of topics that you are supposed to write, or the discussion points, you have a lot of role plays, exercises in your MCB text as well. You can assign your family members all those roles, and then you can also try to enact, or in fact have a conversation on those using the language. Because remember, the more we use it, the more we will be able to refine it. So that is one thing that I would suggest. And when it comes to listening, it is again very important what kinds of language you are exposing yourself to. So make sure that you are, if you are one who is likely to access good listening materials, I would suggest try to listen to a good audiobook. You would find it even in the case of such as your fiction, from your drama section, lots of audiobooks will be available, and you can try to read it. In fact, you can try to listen to it without watching everything. So you can listen to it and try to make notes. So that will also help you in your note making. We have a note making. So that is how you can go about with it. And then I would also suggest that if you are not able to access the internet, what you can also do is try to listen to a new song and try to write down the lyrics. That will also train your listening skills. So those are some of the activities, simple activities and fun activities that you can try at home. And on that note, we would be winding up today's class. Thank you all very much for joining me.